Well, good morning. My name is Willie Lawson. This is the Morning Report. Folks, there are moments in public life when scandal becomes more than a scandal. It becomes a symbol, it becomes a proxy battlefield, a litmus test. Now, I have not commented on this. This is my first comment on this. The Jeffrey Epstein case is one of those moments. It involves unspeakable crimes against minors. It involves wealth, power, global networks, political proximity, and institutional failure. And it touches celebrities, politicians, and financiers, royalty, academics, and media figures. It invokes a moral outrage that is entirely justified. Yet, the very scale of that outrage has created a second crisis: the risk that anger will outrun evidence. Now, if we're serious about justice, we must hold two ideas in our head at the same time. First, the crimes were real and horrific. Second, guilt must be proven. And now that balance is not weakness, it is the foundation of civilization. The following message is from Fight Back Media and our friends at 7 Weeks Coffee. Dear Mr. President, dear members of Congress, we, Fight Back Media, and 7weekscoffee.com are asking you to stand for life. Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider in America. Abortion ends the life of an unborn child. This is not healthcare. This is the taking of a human life. Every year, hundreds of thousands of babies never get the chance to be born. They never take a breath. They never see their mom's faces. They never have a birthday. Taxpayers should not be forced to fund this. If we believe that every child has value, then our laws and money should show it. There are many community health centers across the country that care for women without ending the lives of their children. These centers deserve support. We are asking you to protect the unborn. Stop sending any federal money at all to Planned Parenthood. We're asking you to choose life. Now, one of the most common accelerants in the Epstein discussion has been pictures, has been photographs. Images of powerful individuals standing next to Epstein circulate repeatedly online. We saw these pictures, and some of them were real and some of them were fake. So the implication is clear. Proximity equals participation. But that's not how the law works. And that's not how reason works. And I often look at my own life and the places that I've been blessed to go and the people I've been blessed to be around, just because I happen to be there. I have had pictures taken with senators, and now the dude that's Secretary of State. We're arm in arm at a gathering when he was running for senator. We were in the same place when he ran for senator the first time. We were speaking at the same event, and I'm sure if you mentioned my name to him right now, he wouldn't have any earthly idea who I was. But the pictures can be sent out on the internet in a way that makes it look like we have some connection, and we don't. We're not friends. We're not even acquaintances, really. So the pictures are kind of a problem. A picture proves one fact, just one fact, that two people or more were present at the same place at the same time, if it's not photoshopped, if it's not AI. And that's all it means. It doesn't prove knowledge. It doesn't prove intent. It doesn't prove criminal collaboration. It doesn't prove endorsement of hidden content. It doesn't prove anything. It just proves that we were here at the same time, if it's not fake. So, what in elite social circles, especially in New York and Palm Beach and London and international business hubs, are all tightly interconnected. Charity events, galas, political gatherings, fundraisers place hundreds of people in the same room. Many public figures have taken pictures with individuals later exposed as criminals. How many people took pictures with Bernie Madoff? Doesn't mean they had any idea what Bernie Madoff was up to. A lot of people took pictures with Bernie Madoff. He was a gadfly. He was a player. He was a horrific criminal that ruined people's lives. But just because you were in at the same, fundraiser for the children's hospital, you didn't know that. So that reality is uncomfortable, but it's not equivalent to conspiracy. Okay, if we begin to treat association as proof, then we abandon the core protection of justice and the presumption of innocence. Here's what real evidence looks like. Accountability requires proof, and that means specific, verifiable, admissible evidence. Real evidence would include things like communications demonstrating knowledge or coordination, financial transfers tied directly to criminal activity, travel records linked to criminal events. And I'm going to stop there because there are flight logs that put, I think, Donald Trump and some of his family on one of the Epstein's planes. And people brought those out a year, no more than that, probably 3 years ago. And they said, "See, there's a Trump name right there on the flight manifest." Well, did you keep looking and see where that flight took off from and where it landed? It was from New Jersey to New York. Doesn't prove that it was connected to any criminal activity. Corroborated victim testimony. As a matter of fact, we're having less and less of that having to do with the president. Documented facilitation, concealment, or recruitment. That's what evidence looks like. Conspiracy in criminal law requires agreement and overt acts in furtherance of a crime. Those are special words, aren't they? I will say them again. Conspiracy in criminal law requires agreement and overt acts in furtherance of a crime. Suspicion is simply not enough. Proximity is simply not enough. And reputation is simply not enough. And lowering that standard does not strengthen justice. It actually corrodes it. Yes, we live in this media environment that rewards speed and it rewards outrage and narrative clarity. Social media platforms amplify emotionally charged content. Nuance does not trend. Complexity does not go viral. And this video will not go viral because it is complex. It requires thought. It requires you to think. It requires you to take a breath, take a beat, think about what's going on. So I am sure that this video will not break 1,000 views. But that's not what it's about. But allegations spread instantly. The correction spread very slowly, if at all. So when information moves faster than investigation, the public can mistake virality for verification. Well, I heard, I saw, did you see? The result is trial by algorithm. In that environment, people are sorted into categories instantaneously. Villain, victim. Protector, conspirator. Guilty, innocent. But investigations don't work that way. Grand juries take time. And this is one of the things that has driven me crazy, this administration was in office for 9 months, and then we had people on social media going, "Why isn't anybody in jail yet? Why have they arrested?" Because they weren't. I'm still, even with this video today, I'm still not hopeful that you're going to see a bunch of people get frog marched in the federal prison. I just don't think it's going to happen. I just don't. I mean, and if you want to stop watching here, I get it. I understand. If you want to, unsubscribe, I hear, I hear you. I feel you. I'm mad at you, but I'm not very hopeful that you'll see Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and Bill Gates and whomever else being frog marched in an orange jumpsuit off the federal prison anytime soon, if ever. Because justice is methodical. Forensic analysis takes time. Witness interviews take time. If we want truth, instead of the spectacle of seeing Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton in orange jumpsuits being frog marched into federal prisons, we must accept the pace of due process. Not just due process. People throw that phrase around, but there's a pace to it. There's a tempo. And that tempo is closer to adagio and grave than it is allegro or vivace. Look them up. Because justice is methodical. Outrage is immediate. Here are two temptations that we must avoid. That on the right, we've not done a good job. But we got, as a people, we have to avoid these two things. These two things are equal and opposite errors in a scandal like we're dealing with. The first is mob certainty. The assumption that everyone connected in any way, shape, or form must be guilty. If you are in a picture with Epstein, if you are anywhere connected to Epstein, you are obviously guilty. You were. The second is a reflexive dismissal, assuming that because some accusations are exaggerated, the entire matter is partisan fabrication. Both positions undermine truth. It is entirely possible that powerful individuals facilitated, enabled, and participated in criminal acts. That's entirely possible. It's also entirely possible that others were merely socially connected without knowledge of wrongdoing. See, we've lost the ability to think that two things can actually be true at the same time. The job of the law is to distinguish between those two realities. And that distinction requires discipline. There's a political gravity of this case. The Epstein case is especially combustible because it intersects with politics. Powerful figures across party lines have had some level of documented association with Epstein. In today's polarized climate, any ambiguity becomes political ammunition. So when scandal touches a current or former president, it becomes magnified. Supporters perceive weaponization. Critics perceive cover-up. Media ecosystems amplify whichever narrative serves their audience. And frankly, this is where sadness enters the conversation. The core of this case should be justice for victims and accountability for criminals. But instead, much of the public discourse shifts towards partisan combat. The suffering of minors becomes secondary to political advantage. That distortion does not honor victims. A thermostat does not ignore the temperature. It regulates. Turning down the heat does not mean turning down the seriousness. It means channeling more energy towards constructive outcomes instead of destructive outcomes. Here's 6 steps that the thermostat posture looks like. First, we acknowledge the severity without exaggeration. There is a severity here in this particular case. And we demand transparency within legal boundaries. Third, we must insist on equal enforcement of the law. 4, we must protect the presumption of innocence. 5, we must reject harassment and vigilante impulses. We're just gonna go put those bitches. 6, we must keep the victims. This is the part that some of y'all got to get, because this is part that I never hear some of y'all talking about. We must keep the victims at the center of the discussion. Now, this posture is not partisan. This posture, I hope, is principled. I hear a lot of talk nowadays about due process. They're deporting these people without due process. We need due process. Right. I hear a lot of that. Due process protects the innocent and the guilty alike. Due process is often misunderstood as a shield for the powerful. In reality, it's a shield for the powerless. The standards we weaken today for someone we dislike can and will be used tomorrow against someone we admire. The presumption of innocence forces government to prove guilt. That's why that's why they tell you, if you get convicted or so, arrested for something, and you get charged with something, keep your damn mouth shut. Why? Because it's up to the state to prove you did it. You don't have to prove your innocence. Not in the United States. In some other countries around the world, you got to prove you're innocent. Good luck. Here, they have to prove that you're guilty. And when you have to prove that somebody's guilty, that takes a lot longer. That's a much higher bar to get to, right? That burdens and protects minorities, dissidents, political outsiders, ordinary citizens. If we erode that principle because emotions are high and the people that are possibly being charged are elite, if we get rid of that, we get rid of that for ourselves. And history is filled with examples of moral panics leading to injustice. From witch trials to the Red Scares, societies have repeatedly learned that suspicion is not proof. And justice, real justice, requires evidence. So we scream that we need transparency. And that's legitimate. The public has a right to expect that the law enforcement investigates crimes thoroughly and that institutions do not shield wrongdoing. The transparency must operate. I know. Got to operate within legal and constraints, protecting victims' identities, protecting ongoing investigations, because if the ongoing investigation is out there for everybody to see, then those that are guilty can protect themselves, and that's not what you want. I just brought up a Saturday Night Live skit. This was Gulf War I, where they were having a press conference, and somebody stood up on this was a Saturday Night Live skit where the guy says something, goes, I'm Abdul from the Baghdad Press. We like to know where your troops are and when you plan to attack. This is the kind of thing that people want, right? And and this is not possible when we're talking about ongoing investigations, right? You got to preserve the integrity of the evidence. This is how OJ got off, right? The car got, the Bronco got towed around the neighborhood. It was missing for an hour. So if the Bronco is missing for an hour, and then you process it for evidence, you don't know when that whatever was put in the car because you didn't know where it was for an hour. We got to preserve the integrity of the evidence and avoid defamation. Just not important. Calls for release everything may sound righteous, but reckless disclosure can compromise cases and actually harm victims. The right balance is hard. This lawful disclosure, careful redaction if necessary, and independent oversight where appropriate. Now, when I'm talking about redaction, I'm talking about redaction. It's like there isn't any reason for us all to know every victim's name. There's nothing beneficial for that. No. Every victim's name, because when you talk about release it all, release everything. We're talking unredacted. We're talking about here's a list of all the victims because their names are in some of these files too. Do you need to know? The victims? No, you know, and neither do I. So there needs to be careful redaction and independent oversight where appropriate, because lost in all this political debate are the victims. Young girls were exploited, young boys too. I understand their trauma is lifelong, and for them, this is not a partisan debate. This is not left versus right. This is not red versus blue. This is not Trump versus you. This is not. It's personal devastation. When cases become a political weapon, their suffering becomes background noise. Justice for them requires seriousness, patience, and most importantly, accuracy, not some spectacle. So when the public believes that elites operate under a different legal system, trust erodes. This is where the adults have to come to the table. This is where it can get complicated. That perception fuels anger. That anger fuels speculation. Speculation fuels more distrust, right? So breaking that cycle requires visible, consistent enforcement of the law. If crimes were committed, indictment should follow. If evidence does not support charges, that should be stated clearly and transparently. If crimes were committed, indictment should follow. But if the evidence doesn't support the charges, it's over. Equal justice under the law is not a slogan. It's the only antidote to a corrosive cynicism. Moral outrage is appropriate when crimes against children are involved. Yes. When there are crimes against the most vulnerable, yes. Be angry. Be very angry. But that anger cannot substitute for forensic proof. Of course, we can say this was evil, because it was. We can also say that guilt must be demonstrated. And those two statements are not contradictory. They are not. They're mature. This was terrible. This was evil. And we got to find out the people who did it. And we have to have evidence against them. And we need to find out who they are and what they did. And we got to avoid collective punishment. This is kind of a new concept for a lot of you. It's dangerous to adopt a mindset that assumes guilt by association. Well, he knew Epstein. I'm sure he's guilty too. What? Doesn't make any sense. There are a lot of people in Tampa who knew the Traficantes. Look it up. They weren't all mobsters. Some of them were just sandwich shop owners. Some of them just delivered milk. He went to the Traficante house every day. Sure did. To deliver bread and milk and eggs. He might even had a picture with Traficante. Maybe. Doesn't mean that he was a mobster. So this guilt by association thing is not good. It's collective punishment destroys reputations without a trial. And there isn't any reason to destroy people's reputation if it isn't necessary. And it transforms suspicion into a sentence. A civilized society does not operate like that. Instead, we require specific acts tied to individuals, tied to specific individuals, proven beyond a reasonable doubt. That's how we do it. They did this. This person did this beyond a reasonable doubt. Even for people we don't like. And that's the hard part, isn't it? Even for Bill Gates, even for Bill Clinton, even for Hillary Clinton, even for Donald Trump. So vigilance means asking hard questions. It means refusing to ignore evidence. It means resisting institutional stonewall. Restraint means refusing to leap from question to accusation without proof. The combination of vigilance and restraint, of course, is strength, not weakness. Something that media outlets should be doing. But instead, media outlets are playing a significant role in the shaping of public perception. Sensational headlines generate clicks. Nuanced reporting generates less engagement. Like I said, there's very little chance that this video will get over 1,000 views. And it probably won't get 20 likes. Almost no engagement. Because we're talking about nuanced things. Responsible journalism distinguishes between allegation and proof, between document release and verified wrongdoing. Consumers also, you and I, bear some responsibility. Sharing unverified claims may feel good. Oh, that son of a bitch. Right? But it contributes to noise rather than the clarity. And of course, beyond individual prosecutions, the Epstein case raises questions about institutional safeguards. How were some warning signs missed? Were there failures in earlier plea deals? Remember the early plea deals? Did social status influence prosecutorial discretion? Are trafficking investigations adequately resourced? All these questions aim forward. They seek prevention. Preventing the future abuse is as important as punishing the past abuse. Now, every society faces tests of maturity. Can it hold powerful individuals accountable without abandoning legal standards? Can we hold the powerful accountable without burning down the entire system, even for ourselves? Can it investigate without prejudging? Can we actually investigate without having, what we think is true in our brain already? Can we actually just look at it and let the evidence make the decision? Even if that decision is not what we want, can it remain sober? That doesn't mean not drunk, but sober, serious when confronting horror. This case, the Epstein case, is such a test. Turning down the heat doesn't mean dampening the pursuit of truth. It means rejecting the mob dynamics while preserving moral clarity. Here's how we go forward. Independent investigations where conflict exists. Transparent reporting of findings. Clear communications from authorities. Protection of the victims. Yes. Enforcement based strictly on evidence. Strictly. And this is the hard part for a lot of people, because a lot of us will not know what the evidence actually is, or if there's actually any evidence. We just know the pictures we saw. We just know that I don't like that person. That person is probably a child molester. Right? Those terms get tossed around so indiscriminately. Public acknowledgement when individuals are cleared, when somebody is actually cleared, even if we don't like them. I'm going to say this out loud to see if it invokes any response in your gut. Even if Bill Gates is cleared, how'd that feel? Even if Bill Clinton is cleared, how's that feel? I'm going to say, I'm mentioning another thing. Even if Donald Trump is cleared, how's that feel? How's that feel in your chest? How's that feel in your brain? Did it get you angry a little bit? Then maybe we have some biases. So clearing the innocent isn't weakness, it's justice. Even if that innocent is somebody you don't particularly care for. Because this is why it matters beyond just this one case. If we fail to navigate this moment wisely, the harm will extend far beyond this case. Because we will have normalized guilt by association. We will have normalized viral accusation as verdict. We will have normalized political exploitation of trauma. And that's not progress. A better model would be this: to be relentless about the facts, to be disciplined about proof, to be equal in application, to be centered on victims, to be cautious in accusations, to be courageous in prosecutions. And that's how societies maintain legitimacy. All right, let's finish this up. The Epstein case invokes anger because it touches something primal in us. Exploitation of children and the suspicion that powerful shields wrongdoing. Anger is understandable. But anger is not a legal standard. If we want justice that endures, not a spectacle that fades, we must insist on evidence strong enough to convict and standards strong enough to protect. Turning down the heat does not mean dimming the light. It means focusing the light where it belongs, on verified facts, lawful process, and the unwavering pursuit of the truth. Justice is strongest when it's calm. Justice is most credible when it's careful. And justice is most powerful when it's principled. And in moments like this, principle is what keeps a nation from burning itself to the ground in the name of righteousness. My name is Willie Lawson. This has been the Morning Report. The Morning Report is published on fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com, and fightbackmediatv.com. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.